We are just under a week away from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Generation 9 officially kicking off, but today I wanted to reflect and look at the past and talk about Sword and Shield, and as a whole Generation 8, but mostly Sword and Shield. Let's get into it. Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Media. Today we are talking about Sword and Shield Generation 8 and all the goods and all the bads with these games, because I think these are probably some of the most conflicting games in the entire Pokemon franchise. Now, if you are interested in an even longer discussion, I joined Tucker and Abram over at Backlog Banter for an hour-and-a-half long discussion on these games: Sword and Shield, Let's Go, Arceus, and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Go check out that. That'll be linked in the description down below. But today, I just really wanted to hone in mostly on Sword and Shield and talk about these games on my channel, because this is it. We're saying goodbye to Galar, and that's kind of sad. Maybe this is our first console Pokemon generation, and it's coming to an end in just a few days, and it's weirdly bittersweet, but also I'm excited for the future of Pokemon. Sword and Shield kind of had a bad start just to begin with because Let's Go came out before it. When we heard that they were working on a brand new Pokemon game for the Switch back in 2017, we assumed that was Generation 8. But then it ended up being Let's Go, which I'm very conflicted on those games as well. I did not like them at all when I played them at launch, but then I kind of came to love them later on. Don't like the catching mechanics. And then Sword and Shield came out a year later, but inherently, because of Let's Go's existence, those games, Sword and Shield, I should say, were inherently kind of stunted. The hype was a little lost just because we had already had our first games on a new console. Whereas every other Pokemon generation on a new platform, it started with that new region, you know. With GBA, it was Ruby and Sapphire. With DS, it was Diamond and Pearl. And then on 3DS, it was X and Y. And each of those games clearly had a big jump. Whereas with Sword and Shield, we just got Let's Go, which was Kanto remakes. And then Sword and Shield, which I guess we can kind of start with this talking point. They did just feel like Sun and Moon, I think, in a lot of aspects. I think graphically, these games are very underwhelming. When you're on the linear routes, the game looks good, but it doesn't really do anything in that aspect of pushing Pokemon forward. I think it was Tucker on the hour-long discussion we did. He made a great point. Pokemon actually kind of used to push the hardware to its limit. And I mean, yes, they're handheld games. But Black and White are some of the best looking DS games I played. X and Y, and especially Sun and Moon, are very good looking 3DS games. So to get Sword and Shield, and even Let's Go, I think, to an extent, has that level of polish that you would really expect from a console Pokemon game. Maybe not with like free camera movement and all that, but Let's Go are very nice looking games. Sword and Shield, it felt like Sun and Moon on Switch, graphically, but not polish-wise. It just felt very unpolished in a lot of aspects. I mean, I don't want to bring up the freaking tree in the wild area, and let's talk about the wild area. Now that we have Legends Arceus and we're getting Scarlet and Violet, the wild area, while it was very exciting in the moment, I don't really have any desire to ever go back to. I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't remember a specific area in the wild area where I was like, oh, this is a really cool area, maybe in the DLC, which we'll get to, but I don't know. The wild area is cool, but it definitely feels more like a prototype now in hindsight. And I think this might be an issue with all of these open world Pokemon games moving forward, where I feel like it might actually ruin the replay value a little bit, which you might think is kind of weird because open world means more things to hunt for and do. But I guess talking about Arceus real quick, Legends Arceus, it's like Breath of the Wild. I don't know if replaying that game would be as fun as it was playing it for the first time. Breath of the Wild is a game very founded on its discovery and just learning about the game, discovering everything for the first time, and Legends Arceus is the same. I'm worried about that for Scarlet and Violet, totally, but going back to the wild area, I feel like that's just not going to be the same the second time you do it, third time you do it, right? I know my subsequent playthroughs of Sword and Shield, which I mean, I played through these games a couple times. I did not really look around the wild area at all. And I think it's just because it was also very kind of truncated and it wasn't fully realized. You know, this was before you could throw a Pokeball and catch a Pokemon. This was before they got rid of the transition into a battle screen. You know, all these things that make open world Pokemon okay now, they weren't quite there in Sword and Shield, which once again just makes it feel like a prototype of what we are getting now with Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet. As a whole, I think Galar is an okay region, but outside that wild area, it is also very linear. I never really have that much issue with that, My issue with Galar and its characters comes from just the story. I had a coworker when I worked retail that really loved Galar because it kind of just dumbed it down to basics, where you're just a kid getting your badges. You're not some, you're not killing a god, basically, or, fighting god Pokemon or fighting the crazy evil organization. We had Team Yell, which is basically nothing. I'm okay with it going back to basics about, it's about your journey getting all the gym badges and taking on the Pokemon League. But this game had no story until the very end, and then they try to push it all in with Eternatus at the very end, and then I think, you get Zacian and Zamazenta post-game, right? With Swordward and Shieldbert. I did not like the story. I think all of the characters are pretty unremarkable, to say the least. Leon is obviously the highlight. Hop is okay, but everybody else is just very unmemorable. And I'm sure I'll get comments saying like, I liked was it Rose, Chairman Rose, and his little assistant lady, or whatever she was. And Marnie's obviously iconic, but I'm not attached to these characters the way I was to N or Getsus or any of the characters in Sun and Moon at all. I think Sun and Moon certainly has the best characters of any Pokemon game, far and away. So to go from Sun and Moon to Sword and Shield's story and characters and just how they presented all that, it was a little disappointing. But one thing I think Sword and Shield did very well, exceptionally well if anything, is its multiplayer. Something I will always say, I will always profess my love for X and Y because of its multiplayer functionality and the PSS, the player search system. That was the greatest thing Game Freak has done in terms of Pokemon, in my opinion, since the series' inception. I really think PSS makes X and Y great games. Once again, maybe not going back to them is as fun, but in the moment, X and Y were exceptionally fun because of the PSS. Sun and Moon got rid of all that. They added the Festival Plaza. It was not good. But Sword and Shield kind of brought it back a little bit. Not quite at PSS level, but adding these raids that you can do co-op with your friends, then the Dynamax Adventures that we got in the DLC. These things make the game feel online and makes them feel like you're actually connected to a world. I mean, you can just do raids with random people. That's exciting. That is what I want. I'm glad we're getting those back in Scarlet and Violet. And I think, just the raids as a concept, I think that I want to drive that home. It's so obvious looking back that should have always been there, but the raids are next to PSS, in my opinion, in terms of importance to the Pokemon franchise. That is an absolute staple. I cannot see them ever taking that away now. If they do, I would be shocked because the raids are it's such an easy way to kind of get the community together, have these events. We're getting a Charizard Terra raid in Scarlet and Violet, and just have these events and have this community come together. And I think the raids are Sword and Shield's obvious high point. Which, going back to what I was saying about the wild area, to be fair, that would not be possible without the wild area. So while I have issues with the wild area, and I don't think going back to it would be fun, it certainly helped the raids kind of feel a little bit more natural. And I'm hoping Scarlet and Violet does even better with the Terra raids and having them feel like natural parts of the world. Whereas, Sword and Shield, you're just going to the freaking red light in the sky, and that's it. Messing with your Switch's internal clock. Remember that little glitch you could do at launch where you just milk whatever Pokemon you wanted? That was funny. And another thing that I think Sword and Shield did exceptionally well is just its raw mechanics. I think mechanically Sword and Shield, as someone who does not play competitive Pokemon, is probably the best Pokemon game. I think that's pretty much only gotten better in terms of battles and gimmicks. We'll get to gimmicks. I just think this game feels very nice to play. It's very fast. It feels good. Let's talk about Gigantamax, though. I like Gigantamax. Let me make that clear. I like Gigantamax. I don't like Dynamax. I think making your Pokemon just bigger without a new form is so boring. I get it. I get why they did it. We're kind of getting a similar thing with Terrestrialization, although I think that's much more exciting because you're actually changing your type. But making your Pokemon stats boosted just because it's getting bigger is very boring. I think it's almost Z-move tier boring. So, not a fan of that. Gigantamax, though, is very good. I do like that a lot. I like having a new form for a Pokemon. If you're going to have a gimmick like this, like Mega Evolutions, it's got to have a new form. With Scarlet and Violet, no spoilers, but I'm very excited with what they've done here with Terrestrialization. And then the other thing that I think are kind of our replacements for Mega Evolutions. So, Gigantamax, okay. Dynamax, no. Not a huge fan of Dynamax, but conceptually it's cool, and it lets you have every Pokemon partake in this new gimmick, so I get it, but I personally did not think it was super fun. Let's talk about the DLC for a minute. So I actually have not finished Crown Tundra. I played a little bit of it, but I've only finished Isle of Armor, and I think this was another half step in showing what Pokemon could be in an open world setting, which we later saw more with Arceus. These areas are definitely better and bigger and more worth exploring than the wild area in the base game. The Isle of Armor getting Kubfu and Urshifu and Galarian Slowpoke, and then the birds are in the Crown Tundra, right? Or actually, were they? Yeah, they were. Totally. Unless I'm mistaken. Anyway, getting those legendaries and having these new forms, Galarian forms, it was all very exciting. It was the first time we got paid DLC for a Pokemon game, at least like this, and I think that's just, that alone is huge. I think there are some people that see the word DLC and get a little like, oh, I don't like that. Would you rather them sell you the game again for $60? Genuinely, would you rather that? And then you have to play through the entire boring story of Sword and Shield again to get to the DLC. I hope DLC is what they just do moving forward instead of ever doing an upgraded version again. I hope we don't get a Pokemon game next year. I hope we just get DLC for Scarlet and Violet, because adding DLC to Sword and Shield is such a smart thing, and I'm so glad they did it. I still need to go back and finish Crown Tundra, like I said. I played a little bit of it, and that map is fun to explore. But, yeah, DLC as a whole is just a fantastic concept for Pokemon. Never bring back upgraded versions, please. DLC good. And lastly, before we move on to Legends Arceus, I do want to talk about just the Pokemon designs as a whole. I'm actually going to bring up the list here. I think Sword and Shield has a very, very strong Pokedex and new Pokemon, with a decent amount of stinkers, though. I think there are a decent amount of stinkers in this game. I think all of the starters are kind of unremarkable in their final evolved state. Sobble and Scorbunny are all pretty good. Grookey's very boring. Rillaboom's boring, in my opinion. Cinderace is fine. I kind of grew to like it over time. And Inteleon is also okay. Cinderace is probably the best one of the three, though, as someone who picks Sobble. Corviknight is one of the coolest bird Pokemon we've gotten in these games ever. Choodle is one of the worst Pokemon I think we've ever seen. Boltund is remarkably boring. Colossal's really cool. Applin and Flapple are awesome. Silicobra, awesome. Toxtricity, I never really got the hype for, to be honest. I don't like Toxtricity that much. Toxel's cool. Centiskorch, awesome. Clobbopus, awesome. Sinistea and Poltegeist are great designs. Hatterene, awesome design. Grimmsnarl, awesome Pokemon. Then we got evolutions for the first time, I think, since Generation 4, not counting Sylveon, of old Pokemon. Now, of course, it was Galarian forms evolutions, but that's still something. So we got Obstagoon and Berserker and Cursula and Sirfetch'd and Mr. Rhyme and Rumrigus. That was so exciting to see after Gen 6 and Gen 7 and Gen 5 completely slacked in that regard. I love getting evolutions of old Pokemon. I love expanding upon that, which is why I'm so happy with Scarlet and Violet knowing what is in the game. Because I think there's nothing more exciting than seeing your old fan-favorite Pokemon come back with a new actual evolution. Mega Evolution and Gigantamax and all this, that's exciting, but an actual new name, new evolution, this is something that they're doing, they're going hard on. That is just awesome. So I think I thank Sword and Shield for doing that. Phalanx is awesome, or Phalanx. Pincurchin, Snom, one of my all-time favorite Pokemon. But then we have more weird ones, like Stonejourner. I like Stonejourner, but he's kind of weird. Ice-Cube, bad penguin Pokemon. Indeedee, that's just Audino, but worse. Morpeko, very boring Pikachu clone. Copperage is fine. I like the fossils, Dracozolt and Arctozolt especially. Duraludon's fine. The pseudo-legendary is very good with the Dreepy and Dracozolt, or Dragloak, and then Dragapult. I like that a lot. And then we get to the legendaries. I think Zacian and Zamazenta, Zacian and Zamazenta are probably two of the most boring mascot legendaries we've ever gotten. I think beat for beat, they're better than, like, Solgaleo, for example, but they're nowhere near Lunala level. They're nowhere near Xerneas and Yveltal. They're nowhere near Reshiram and Zekrom. They're nowhere near Dialga. You get the idea. Zacian and Zamazenta are just incredibly boring. They're just dogs. I don't care. I don't like them. I truly, genuinely do not like Zacian or Zamazenta. I don't like either of them. I think they're both abundantly boring. That's why Koraidon and Miraidon and Scarlet and Violet are so exciting, because I think those are probably the best mascot legendaries we've gotten since... It's been a while since I've seen a Pokemon, a legendary mascot legendary that I've liked as much as Miraidon. So shout out to Scarlet and Violet. I think Sword and Shield mascot legendary is pretty bad. Eternatus is cool. And then we have the DLC Pokemon, which were also just kind of okay. Calyrex and Glacier and Spectier. I don't know. Urshifu's cool, but he doesn't fully feel like a legendary to me, you know, because he evolves. So that's just weird. Zarude is a Pokemon that exists, I guess. I don't know. I think the Sword and Shield Pokédex is very weird. It's very lopsided, or very, very half and half. I think it has some very, very strong designs. Snom, Phalanx, You know, these Pokemon that I've come to love and adore, but then it also has just a bunch of random stinkers, to be honest. And that's not even getting into the whole national dex debate. I've actually never been one of those. I don't really care. I think we are at a point now with over 1,000 Pokemon, counting regional forms, that we don't need every Pokemon in every game. It would be cool if you can do that through home compatibility, and like that's obviously the goal, I think, eventually, is to get back to that point now that we're on a home console. But I'm fine with the Pokedex being 400 with DLC in this game, or, you know, whatever it is with the DLC. It's 400 base game plus with DLC. I think that's fine. That's enough Pokemon to have a great experience in Galar, so I've never been one of those people. And then I want to talk about Legends Arceus a little bit, because I think this is easily the best game that came out in Generation 8. Legends Arceus is such a nice breath of fresh air in the Pokemon series. I do think Legends Arceus is the best Pokemon game we've gotten since probably X and Y. I'm going to be honest. I know that's a hot take, but I genuinely really enjoyed my times with Legends Arceus. Once again, though, I do think replaying it might not offer the same experience, and it's not without its issues. I mean, graphically, it's a little weird. I kind of like the art style, but I get it. Certainly looks better than Sword and Shield, but yeah, Legends Arceus was just such a nice, fresh, new experience. We got new regional forms and basically a new region, even though it was technically Sinnoh. We got new legendaries. We got a new addition to the Unova Genies line, which is awesome. I love that. Basically, you add Pokemon that are related to Pokemon from past games as a new number, or as like a whole new Pokemon, and I'm pleased. And Amorous is cool. I like that they did that. Adding evolutions to Stantler and Overquill, Quillfish, you know, like that's exciting to me. I like that stuff a lot. And as someone who does play Pokemon casually, that's honestly one of the main things I'm looking for, is just Pokemon that I can attach to and really love and adore. And adding Pokemon, or adding evolutions of old Pokemon, is a big part of that. That's awesome for me. You know, for example, Quillfish is a Pokemon I've seen my entire life, so to have that finally get an evolution is just inherently exciting for me, even though I don't really care about Quillfish. So overall, I think Generation 8 of Pokemon is a tale of two stories. I think Sword and Shield does a lot right, and I do think they're better than people say, but it also does a lot wrong, and I think going back to it in 10 years, 15 years is going to be harder than a lot of other older Pokemon games because of the wild area, and because it felt like a half-step. It felt like they were figuring out how to make home console games after Sun and Moon, which took advantage of the 3DS's hardware. It felt like Sword and Shield was just them trying to figure out how to make a home console game, which is not a compliment, and it's not an excuse. But despite that, I still think they made a very good video game. I still had a lot of fun with Sword and Shield. I still put over, like, probably 150 hours in both games, 200 hours in both games combined. And I enjoyed my time with them. There's certainly moments where I'm like, Sword and Shield's whatever. And then other times where I'm like, oh, Sword and Shield's actually really good. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that mechanically, Pokemon is probably at its best in Sword and Shield. Story-wise, Sword and Shield is the worst Pokemon game. I think those are my two biggest hot takes with Sword and Shield. So let me know, what do you all think of Sword and Shield and Generation 8 as a whole in the comments below. Didn't mention BDSP because I think those games are absolute trash, worst Pokemon games we've ever gotten. Thanks, Ilka, for that. But yeah, let me know what you think of Generation 8 and specifically Sword and Shield as a whole down in the comments below. I would love to hear y'all thoughts. Scarlet and Violet coming out in like 6 or 7 days whenever I'm posting this. I don't know when I'm posting this, so extremely exciting stuff. Cannot wait to play these games and stream it. So if you're interested in seeing more Pokemon content, please hit that subscribe button. At the time of filming, we're heading close to 12,000 subs. Hopefully we can smash that. Maybe we're past that by the time this video goes up. Hopefully, that'd be nice. But yeah, subscribe so you stay up to date on all the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet content. Hit that bell so you don't miss a single video. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at BoTalksMedia. Just hit 1,000 followers over there after freaking 10 years, so that was nice. Thank you. And join the Discord. That is linked down below. Until next time, folks. Peace.